the point I want to make is they have divided autism into three categories: level one, level two, level three. Level one is so low that literally any human being qualifies as being autistic now, level one. And that makes them immediately eligible for all the psychiatric drugs. So antidepressants, stimulants, antipsychotic, and these in the United States can be prescribed by a nurse practitioner. And the business is you come, the child goes through an analysis. He gets pegged to having autism, so somebody makes money there. Then he goes to the nurse practitioner. She gets paid when he walks in the door. Then she prescribes. Um, she is rewarded in the United States with trips to fancy vacations and trips to conferences and conferences, always in Hawaii or Florida or some lovely place. Um, they can also be compensated for writing papers. They can also be compensated for being on panels. So they show up in Hawaii, they spend an hour talking about their experience with the drug, and then they go and surf or swim or whatever it is they're going to do. And now with Zoom, they get paid to stay home in their pajamas and just say, "Oh yeah, we're prescribing the drug. It's going great." Then the other way they get paid, this is all in the book, is the child now has to be medically monitored because he or she is on a powerful psychoactive drug. So they have to see the nurse practitioner on a regular basis. And those visits are very short, but they still cost the same amount as a extended visit. So a nurse practitioner in the United States can make $600 an hour seeing one patient every 15 minutes at $150 an hour. So this is a absolute cash cow for these people.
It's a
And,
cash cow, but also can it allows for crowd control. Crowd control is the an understanding of the limbic system and really creating a level of emotional charge will make a crowd all react in the same way.
oh,
Uh,
that's interesting. That's interesting. Okay. Okay. But just on the I'm going to I'm going to stick to the mundane level,
it's just
and it is incredibly profitable. You have a couple of hundred kids on your roster, and you're just ringing the cash register every month to an incredible degree, just because you've determined in all your wisdom as a nurse practitioner that this child needs X, Y, and Z. And there's no therapy that goes along with most of these diagnoses. She's just dispensing drugs and not talking with the child about his or her life. I mean, so that's level one. Level two is a child that's having definite difficulties, maybe, a lot of emotional meltdowns, um, real problems communicating with other people, not just sporadic ones, but generic across the board. That's level two. And then level three, of course, is the severe, with as our friend pointed out, she didn't know what a spoon was anymore, had no idea what a spoon was or what it was for, self-harming, serious meltdowns multiple times a day. So what they've done is they've lumped all of that into one diagnosis, and they call it the spectrum. And all the attention in the media and in books is given to level one people. I haven't been able to find a single book on level three autism written for the general public. Doesn't exist. And those children are ignored as not really existing at all. They're not in the news media ever. Um, and then if you mention their existence, like Robert Kennedy Jr. did, an immediate band of attackers, uh, uh, autism uh, rights leaders, immediately come out of the woodwork and start attacking you. In fact, only one study has ever been done on what percentage of people with an autistic diagnosis have level three. Only one. And when that study came out, that scientist was attacked by the activists. So what they've done is they've created a they've hidden the signal. right? So to take this full circle, there's a serious vaccine injury, and the child's function is gone. Um, uh, it's and then they call it. I love the language. It's a regression. You know, well, regression means you plateau a little bit, maybe you slide back, and then you commence going forward again. This is a catastrophic interruption of functioning, so this is how, and then they took the Asperger's diagnosis, which they had medicalized previously, but now that doesn't even exist anymore. That's not even a thing. So on the one hand, they've created this vast field of people that have an autism diagnosis from which they're deriving their identity now, some of them. They've put they've opened the door to put them on powerful psychoactive drugs, and they're completely ignoring the children that have been severely injured. So this is, I mean, you probably already knew all this, but I had to work my way through it to see how the whole system operates.
And also, as they become adolescents, they're frequently taken away from their parents and put in institutions with straitjackets and just left in a. I mean, there was about 4 years ago, there was quite a fuss about this made on the media in the UK, and then it just disappeared. Father not being able to see his daughter except through a hole in a door, and there she was tied to a chair.
Yeah, and this is once these children achieve a certain physical size and mass, if they're not treated properly, they're physically dangerous. They can be, and some families don't know how to deal with it.
Was very, very difficult. So, but and uh, just so heartrending when you know you can't, and your child, whom even those children who are very violent, parents still love them.
Yeah,
They don't do anything. They know that that's not the child. They can see that. They've got some idea that of the soul spirit of the child, but they can't cope, and they're very frightened as the child grows up. What are they going to do with this person when it becomes a teenager? No hope, no hope, no hope for them, and then the child gets taken away and is probably abused.
I'm afraid that's the case. I mean, so to maybe go back full circle, what would be really helpful, uh, number one, is to acknowledge the reality of these. First of all, the reality of these children at all, because their very reality is completely hidden. And then number two, to acknowledge that these are vaccine injuries. And let's talk about why that's the case, and why this is just so obvious. Whether born perfectly or not, the child's walking, talking, interacting with the world in a way children at that age interact. Maybe he or she has some impairments, but is in the world. And after this vaccine and the illness that follows the vaccine, they lose it all. That cannot be anything other than an injury. Or, I mean, it can be, look, in the book I say it can be a blunt trauma to the head, right? That could possibly cause it. It could be a virus that's just so unbelievably, wreaks such havoc that the brain's inflamed and the inflammation doesn't. I mean, that's a. And then the only other option, the third option, is poisoning. There's only three options, right?
Yes,
So it's not blood. It's not injury to the head. That would be known. It's not a virus because Anthony Fauci would have found it by now, or one of his minions would have found it. So the only other thing it can be is poison. And I go on in the book to say, let's look at the different things that can poison the nervous system.
that's very good, simple,
Yeah,
Ken.
I believe
Mhm.
I'm the only one that's done this because I've read a lot of the literature. So there's six ways that you can be neurologically poisoned, and a lot of and they all involve exposure to a lot of toxins, right? And things that an infant would not be exposed to. It's people that work in factories or handle, toxic material and so on. Um, However, and even the heavy metals that cause, but there's six categories, and heavy metals is only one of them. I'd have to look at my own notes to tell you what the other five were, but the other five are impossible, right? They're just not, an infant's not going to encounter these substances in the quantity necessary to have that kind of an instant turnaround. And even the mothers, and I point out that, we, as bad as people say things are, we are less environmentally polluted in the last 40 years than we were in the 1950s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Oh, yes. Mm.
And I guess you'd have to be young not to understand that because you didn't experience it. I mean, London was, didn't they have a day in London where hundreds of people died of an inversion?
Smog,
It,
smog, London smog. Mm.
smog. And they just, people are dying in the streets, literally.
Mm.
We don't have that in the Western world, and yet, so we can't attribute diet or even maternal stress. And of course, we both know maternal stress is something that to be avoided. But there's no more maternal stress today than there was, say, during the Depression in the 1930s, you know, or during, World War II. So that can't. So the last category is heavy metal poisoning. And when you go through the different heavy metals that cause neurological damage, again, none of them have any, children have no exposure to them, except for two, mercury and aluminum. And the symptoms of mercury and aluminum poisoning are identical with what happens to someone who has gotten ill after a vaccine and regressed. They're just the same. So what I'm doing in the book is I'm trying to close all the doors where people are saying, well, it can't, we don't know what it is, and it's a mystery.
Interesting again, mercury poisoning is something that dentists suffered from, and they had the same sort of symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, and hatters.
What's that? And hatters, yeah. And
Hatters.
it's yeah, it's the same thing. So in the book, I'm trying to, I want it at the very first part of the book. I want to just close the door to any consideration that this is a natural thing. I also talk about how ridiculous it is to attribute it to genetics. You can't go one generation and suddenly the number of people with this dramatic problem is a cause of genetics. It's just so absurd. It does, and yet all the money. By the way, all the money goes to genetic studies when it comes to
Yes,
autism.
yes, yes.
All of it.
Which is so interesting again because it's already well known that you can't look at genetics. You have to consider epigenetics. Genes only switch on because of environmental influences.
Absolutely, yeah,
What they're saying is misleading the public straight away, deliberately, of course.
yeah. Because we know this is true because you can
Science,
have you
science
can you
doesn't.
can have the worst genetic profile in the world and be healthy as a horse.
Mhm.
In fact, they did. The favorite study of this, and I wish I knew the name of it offhand, but they studied, I think, some centenarians. Is that what you call it? A centenarian? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And they had terrible genes, some of them. So, but they had a lifestyle that did not trigger
Mm,
the diseases. And then of course you have the guys who, um, you've probably heard this. He's 108 and he smokes a cigar every day and he drinks a pint of whiskey, and it's like, what the hell? Well, that's probably a person with a flawlessly developed diaphragm system, right? It doesn't matter what you feed him, he's going to deal with it.
yes.
But go, yep.
There's a woman recently, I think she was 106 or something, and she had been a cleaner on her knees. So this movement, of course, would be helping her diaphragm. So just ordinary people can live this incredibly long period of time, whereas the elite rich are always striving for youth and longevity. In fact, eternal life is, um, and yet you look at them and they look terrible.
And by the way, that eternal life is not an exaggeration. Some of them literally today, to this day, as we speak, are willing to spend money in pursuit of eternal life.
Be frozen too, isn't
Yeah, that's
it?
the other thing. That yeah, the
Like Walt Disney was frozen.
yeah, well, that's yeah, and well, if I have a certain budget, I can freeze my whole body. If I only have a limited budget, I could have my head taken off after I die, and that will be frozen, and I can it
Yes.
it belies such an insane view of their own existence, you know.